The morning sun rose slowly over the trees. Light came through the windows of the cabin. Ethan opened his eyes and stretched. He looked toward the couch. The alien girl was still asleep. The quilt was wrapped around her like a cocoon. He got up quietly and made some breakfast. The smell of eggs and toast filled the room. He poured a glass of water and set it on the table beside her. Then he sat down and waited. After a while, she moved. Her eyes opened, and she looked at Ethan. He gave her a small smile and pointed to the food. She looked at it, then at him. Slowly, she sat up. Ethan pushed the plate toward her. She picked up a piece of toast and sniffed it. Then she took a small bite. Her eyes widened a little, and she took another bite. It was clear she liked it. He laughed softly. See? Not bad, right? Of course, she didn't understand the words, but she smiled a little. That was enough for Ethan. After eating, she stood and walked around the cabin. She touched the walls and looked at the pictures. Everything was new to her. Ethan watched her, letting her explore. She stopped in front of a mirror. Her reflection surprised her. She tilted her head and reached out to touch the glass. Then she looked at Ethan as if asking a question. He nodded. Yes, that's you. She pointed to herself and then at him. Ethan understood. He placed his hand on his chest and said, Ethan. She watched him carefully, then pointed at herself. He waited. She opened her mouth and made a soft sound. Lee, R.A. Lyra, he repeated. She nodded once. Ethan smiled. Lyra, got it. From that moment, things started to change. Each day, Lyra grew stronger. She learned small things from watching Ethan. She watched how he cooked, how he cleaned, and how he worked with his tools. Sometimes, she tried to copy him. She would hold a spoon or hammer the wrong way. But she smiled when she got it right. Ethan made a small notebook where he drew pictures. He would draw a cup, then point to a real cup. Lyra picked up words this way. She would say them slowly, trying her best. One night, while the wind howled outside, they sat near the fire. Lyra looked at the quilt. She touched it gently, running her fingers over the stitches. She pointed to it and then to Ethan. Yours? Yes, he said. My grandma made it. She looked confused. He drew a picture of an old woman and a younger boy. Then he pointed at himself and smiled. Grandma? Lyra seemed to understand. She nodded and held the quilt tighter. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she stood up and walked to a small table. She opened her hand and showed Ethan a strange stone. It glowed faintly. She placed it on the quilt and waited. Ethan looked at it. The stone was warm and pulsing with light. When he touched it, it glowed brighter. He felt something, a soft wave of calm and warmth. Lyra smiled. Gift. For me? Ethan asked. She nodded. Thank you. Quilt, safe. This safe. It was the first time she had spoken so many words. Ethan was surprised, but also proud. Thank you, Lyra. This means a lot. From that night, Lyra always kept the quilt near. She seemed to understand that it was more than just fabric. It was comfort, safety, and kindness. One day, Ethan walked into the cabin and found Lyra painting. She used crushed berries and water on old paper. She had drawn the quilt. Around it were small pictures of the cabin, trees, fire, and two figures, her and Ethan. He stood there, looking at it, unable to speak. She looked up and smiled. Home. Ethan felt his chest grow tight. He nodded. Yes, home. Something had changed. They were no longer strangers. They were something more. The days passed. Snow began to melt outside. But inside the cabin, something beautiful had already started to bloom. And it had all started with a quilt. The days grew longer, and the snow began to melt. Trees started to show their green tips again. Birds returned to the forest, singing in the early morning. Ethan noticed a change, but he also noticed something else. Lyra was different too. She walked with more strength now. Her wounds had healed. She laughed softly when he made a joke, even if she did not fully understand it. She helped with chores around the cabin. Every day, she spoke more words. It was not perfect, but it was enough. One afternoon, Ethan sat outside, fixing a wooden chair. Lyra sat on the steps, watching the sky. Suddenly, she stood up and walked into the trees. Ethan waited, but she didn't return. After a few minutes, he put down his tools and followed. He found her in a small clearing. She was crouched near the ground, picking up glowing stones. They were blue and smooth, almost like glass, but with a soft light inside them. "Lyra, what are you doing?" he asked. She looked at him and smiled. "For Quilt." He stepped closer. "For the quilt?" She nodded. "Gift. Quilt gave me. Warm. Safe. I give it back." She placed the stones carefully into a small pouch. Then she held it out to him. "These are for my world," she said slowly. "We use them to remember." Ethan took the pouch and opened it. The glow from the stones lit up his hand. They felt warm, just like the stones she had given him before. "They hold memory?" he asked. "Yes. Feeling. Places. People." That evening, back at the cabin, Lyra spread the quilt on the table. She laid out the stones around it, one at each corner. Then she took a small metal tool and gently stitched a crystal into one patch. As soon as it was sewn in, the patch shimmered. Ethan watched as a small image appeared above it. It was a moving picture, like a memory. He saw a field of tall red grass and 2 alien children laughing and running. One looked like Lyra. He stared, not knowing what to say. "My home," Lyra whispered. Before the war." Ethan nodded. He did not ask questions. He only sat beside her, quiet and still. Over the next few days, Lyra added more stones to the quilt. Each one showed a memory, some bright, some dark. One showed her spaceship, shining and new. Another showed a room full of lights and strange symbols. One showed fire and smoke. "Ship crash," she said. "Bad people." Ethan understood. Something had gone wrong, and she had been running. Now she was here. But the quilt, once simple, had become something more. It held her story. It held her heart. One night, Lyra pointed at the fire. "You help me, I help you." "You already have," Ethan said. She shook her head. "More. Come." She led him outside, back into the woods. They walked until they reached the crash site. The ship was still there, half buried, silent. She touched the side of the ship, and a small door opened. Inside was a dim light. She stepped in, and Ethan followed. The ship was small, but full of strange tech. She walked to a silver wall and placed her hand on it. It lit up, and a soft hum filled the room. A panel opened, revealing a crystal. She gave it to Ethan. "This shows all. My story." He looked at it, unsure what to do. "Place on quilt," she said. "Will show truth." Back at the cabin, she stitched the new crystal into the center of the quilt. When Ethan touched it, a strong light came from the fabric. A large image filled the room, floating above them. It showed her planet, her family, her mission. It showed the day her ship was attacked. It showed her escape, the crash, and Ethan finding her in the snow. Ethan stood quietly. It was all so much, but he did not feel fear. He felt something else. He felt trust. When the image faded, Lyra looked at him. "Now you know," she said. "I am alone, but not now." He nodded. "Not anymore." That night, they sat together near the fire. The quilt was between them, glowing softly. The forest outside was quiet, but inside the cabin, something strong had formed. A bond made not of words, but of kindness, warmth, and truth. And at the center of it all was a simple quilt, now full of life and light. It was a cold and quiet night. The sky was dark, and snow fell gently on the trees. Ethan was inside his small cabin, sitting by the fire. He lived alone deep in the woods. The world outside was peaceful, and he liked the silence. Suddenly, he heard a loud noise. It was like thunder, but it didn't come from the sky. The ground shook a little. Ethan stood up and went to the window. He saw a flash of light in the forest. It was strange and quick. Then everything was quiet again, curious and a little worried. Ethan put on his coat and boots. He grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The cold air hit his face, but he didn't stop. He walked toward the place where the light had come from. Snow crunched under his feet as he moved through the trees. After a short walk, He saw something that made him stop. There was a large object in the snow. It was not from Earth. It looked like a small ship half buried in the snow and dirt. Part of it was broken and smoking. Ethan took a step closer. He saw a figure lying next to the wreck. It was a girl, but not a human girl. Her skin was a light gray-blue color. Her hair was white, and her eyes were closed. She was not moving. He knelt beside her and checked to see if she was alive. She was breathing, but she was cold and hurt. Ethan looked around, unsure what to do. He could not leave her there. She needed help. He took off his backpack and pulled out an old quilt. It was soft and warm, made by his grandmother. He wrapped the alien girl in it gently. Her eyes opened slowly. She looked at him with confusion and fear. "It's okay," Ethan said softly. "You're safe." Of course, she didn't understand his words, but his voice was calm and his hands were careful. She didn't fight or run. Instead, she watched him with tired eyes. Ethan lifted her carefully in his arms. She was light and thin. The quilt kept her warm as he carried her back through the forest. The snow kept falling, but Ethan didn't stop. He walked slowly but surely. When they reached the cabin, he pushed the door open with his foot and stepped inside. The warm air touched their skin. He closed the door and laid her down on the couch near the fire. She looked around with wide eyes. The fire, the furniture, the wooden walls, everything was new to her. She didn't speak, but she pulled the quilt tighter around her. Ethan took off his coat and sat in a chair nearby. He didn't want to scare her. He poured a cup of hot tea and placed it on the table in front of her. She looked at it, but didn't touch it. For a long time, they sat in silence. The only sound was the fire crackling. Ethan watched her carefully. She seemed more alert now. Her eyes moved from one thing to another. Still, she didn't try to talk. That night, Ethan gave her some soup and more blankets. She didn't eat much, but she accepted the kindness. She held the quilt like it was something precious. It was as if she could feel the care and warmth in it. Ethan slept in a chair that night, just in case she needed help. He woke up once to find her looking at the fire, the quilt wrapped tightly around her. She saw him watching and gave a small nod before closing her eyes again. The next morning, the snow was deep outside. The ship was still there in the forest, but Ethan didn't worry about it yet. The girl needed rest and warmth. He decided to help her first and ask questions later. He didn't know where she came from. He didn't know her name or her story. But something inside him said she was not dangerous. She was lost, cold, and hurt. And in that moment, she needed someone. Ethan looked at her again. She was sleeping now, still holding the quilt. It looked like she felt safe for the first time in a long while. He didn't know what would happen next. But for now, he would take care of her, one step at a time. And it all started with a simple quilt. The next morning was quiet. A light fog covered the forest, and the trees stood still. Ethan stepped outside to gather wood. Lyra stayed in the cabin, adding another patch to the quilt. She hummed softly, a sound like wind passing through leaves. Ethan returned with his arms full of logs. He smiled when he saw her working. "You really like that quilt now," he said. Lyra looked up and nodded. "Quilt strong. It holds more than fabric." They spent the rest of the day doing simple things. Ethan fixed a fence post, and Lyra helped by handing him nails. They shared a quiet lunch and then sat together reading the notebook where they wrote new words. Later, while Lyra rested, Ethan went outside again. He wanted to check the crash site. It had been many days, and he was worried someone might have noticed it. When he got there, something was wrong. The ground had been disturbed. Tracks led through the snow. Machines, maybe people. Someone else had found the ship. Ethan hurried back to the cabin. "Lyra," he called. She looked up, sensing his worry. "What happened?" "Someone found your ship. I saw tracks. Maybe a salvage team. Maybe worse." Lyra's eyes narrowed. Not safe. They both knew what this could mean. If someone found her, they might try to take her. Not everyone would treat her kindly. We need a plan, Ethan said. We can't let them find you here. Lyra stood and picked up the quilt. I will hide this. It holds my story. She rolled it up and placed it on the floorboards near the fire. Then she looked at Ethan. We stay quiet. If they come, I will hide. 2 days passed. Nothing happened. They tried to relax, but the worry stayed. Then, on the third morning, a loud knock shook the cabin door. Ethan opened it slowly. 2 men stood there. They wore heavy coats and carried gear. Sorry to bother you, one man said. We're tracking a signal. Some tech fell from the sky. You seen anything strange? Ethan shook his head. Just snow and trees. The second man looked past Ethan into the cabin. Mind if we take a look around? Ethan blocked the doorway. Yes, I do. This is my home. Unless you have a warrant, you can't come in. The first man smiled, but it didn't feel friendly. No need to get upset. We're just doing our job. Ethan stayed calm. I understand, but there's nothing here. Try somewhere else. The men exchanged a look. Then they turned and walked away. Ethan watched until they disappeared into the trees. He shut the door and locked it. Lyra came out from her hiding spot in the small back room. They are not gone for good, she said. They will return. That night, they didn't sleep much. Lyra stood by the window, watching the dark woods. Ethan sat by the fire, holding the glowing stone she had given him. What can we do? He asked. We can show them who I am. Not with fear. With truth. Ethan looked at her. You want to show them the quilt? Yes, but not yet. We wait. We prepare. The next day, they worked together. Lyra sewed more memories into the quilt. Ethan helped fix the wiring on her small scanner. They knew the visitors would return. And they did. The next evening, the men came back. This time, they had more people. They surrounded the cabin. Ethan stepped outside, holding up his hands. We don't want trouble. The leader spoke. You're hiding something. We know the ship crashed near here. Give it up and we leave you alone. Before Ethan could answer, Lyra stepped out. She held the quilt in her hands. The crystals in it began to glow. I am not a weapon, she said clearly. I am not here to fight. The men stared. The quilt lit up and images began to float in the air. Her memories appeared one by one. Her home, her mission to crash, and Ethan's kindness. No one spoke. The light from the quilt was soft but powerful. It showed truth, not fear. This is my story, Lyra said. I came with peace. I found safety. I found a friend. The leader looked unsure. He lowered his scanner. We didn't know. Lyra nodded. Now you do. Leave us be. Slowly, the men backed away. One by one, they turned and left. When the forest was quiet again, Ethan looked at Lyra. That was brave. She smiled. It was time. And together, they stepped back into the warm cabin, the quilt glowing between them. The air was still and quiet the next morning. Ethan stepped outside and looked around. The snow had melted in most places, and the ground was soft and damp. Birds chirped from the trees, but Ethan remained alert. He didn't trust that the men were truly gone. Inside, Lyra sat near the fire, holding the quilt. The crystals sewn into it no longer glowed, but she held it like a treasure. It had become more than a gift. It was part of her life now, a part of her heart. Ethan came back in and sat beside her. They saw the truth, he said. But I don't know if they'll stay away. Lyra nodded. They fear what they don't understand. But we showed peace. Still, they both felt uneasy. It was not over yet. Later that day, Ethan heard a noise from the forest. It was not loud, but it was not natural either. He stepped outside and looked through the trees. Something moved between the shadows. He turned back to the cabin. Lyra, stay inside. But Lyra came to the door, holding a small device in her hand. It blinked with soft light. Someone is close, she said, not the same as before. Ethan stood ready with a long stick, not to fight but to protect. Soon, a man stepped into the clearing. He looked different from the others. He wore a dark coat and had a calm face. "My name is Aaron," he said. "I'm not with the crew that came before. I work with a peaceful science group. We tracked the signal, but we stayed back when we saw the men from the salvage team." Ethan did not lower his guard. "Why are you here?" Aaron raised his hands. "I only want to help. I know there was a crash. I know there was someone on that ship. I also saw the light from your cabin. I saw the memory quilt. I've never seen anything like it." Lyra stepped out slowly. She looked at Aaron, then at Ethan. "He speaks calm," she said. "We listen." Aaron's eyes widened when he saw her. "So it's true. You are real." Lyra nodded. "I am Lyra. I came in peace." Aaron looked at Ethan. "You help her? Even when you didn't know who she was?" "She needed help," Ethan said simply. That was enough. Aaron took a slow breath. "Many will want to find her. Some for good reasons. Others not. But we can protect her. We have people who care about peace. About learning." Lyra looked at Ethan. "I trust you. What should we do?" Ethan thought for a long moment. Let's hear more from him. But no promises yet. They invited Aaron inside. He sat near the fire and looked at the quilt. "It's more than fabric," he said. "It's alive. It holds memory and emotion." Lyra nodded. "It holds truth and trust." Aaron shared stories of other peaceful visitors who had come to Earth before. Most stayed hidden. Some were never found. His group worked quietly to protect them. Ethan listened carefully. He did not fully trust Aaron yet, but something in his voice felt honest. "Will they come again?" Ethan asked. "The ones who wanted the ship?" Aaron nodded. "Maybe. They don't give up easily." Lyra stood and brought out a small piece of metal from the crash site. "This is a key. It can destroy the rest of the ship. If they can't use it, they will stop hunting it." Ethan was surprised. "You would destroy it?" "Yes," Lyra said. "It's not worth the danger. I have the memories. I have you." Aaron nodded. "It's your choice, but it's a smart one." That night, Ethan, Lyra, and Aaron walked back to the ship. Lyra entered it one last time. She placed a metal key into a slot. A soft hum filled the air. Lights blinked, and the ship began to sink slowly into the earth. In minutes, it was gone, covered and silent. Just forest once more. "Now it's just us," Ethan said. Lyra looked up at the stars. "I still have home. Right here." They returned to the cabin. Aaron said he would leave for now, but return with supplies and help if needed. "We'll keep you safe," he said, "but I'll only come back if you want me to." Ethan nodded. "We'll let you know." As Aaron walked away, Lyra held the quilt again. "You gave me this," she said. "It started everything." Ethan smiled. "It was just a blanket." "No," Lyra said. "It was the first kindness." And now, it had become a symbol of their bond. Something simple, yet powerful enough to change everything. The forest was quiet again. The sky was clear, and the stars shone bright above the trees. Inside the cabin, Ethan sat by the fire, cleaning his tools. Lyra sat at the table, sewing another patch onto the quilt. It had been a week since Aaron left. No one had returned. The ship was gone, and with it, the danger seemed to fade. Still, Ethan and Lyra stayed alert. They knew peace could be fragile, but something had changed between them. They were no longer just a man and an alien. They were friends. They had shared food, stories, silence, and trust. Lyra looked up from her sewing. "I want to show you something. Come." Ethan followed her outside. The night was cold, but the stars made the sky feel wide and alive. Lyra held the quilt over her shoulder. She walked to the clearing where the ship used to be. She placed the quilt on the ground. The crystals began to glow softly. Then she stood in the center of it. "Touch the edge," she said. Ethan stepped forward and touched the corner of the quilt. A light spread out around them. The crystals glowed brighter. In seconds, they were surrounded by images, floating pictures of Lyra's memories, Ethan's cabin, and moments they had shared. The air shimmered, and then something new happened. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. He closed his eyes and saw something inside his mind, not a picture, but a feeling. He felt what Lyra had felt when he gave her the quilt. Cold, fear, then safety and warmth. He felt her gratitude, her confusion, and her joy. He opened his eyes slowly. Was that your memory? Lyra nodded. Yes. The quilt is more now. It carries us both. Our bond. Ethan stepped into the center with her. The light grew. Above them, the stars seemed to move closer. What is happening? He asked. Lyra held out her hand. I give you a piece of my world. A soft wind blew through the trees. The quilt lifted slightly off the ground, but stayed open like a circle of light. Ethan saw new images, not just memories, but dreams. A future. He saw Lyra walking in a field near the cabin. He saw her laughing with children. He saw humans and aliens together, building something new. The light faded slowly. The quilt settled back on the grass. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Why show me this now? Lyra looked at him. Because you gave me a home. I want you to know what it means. Ethan nodded. He felt something in his chest he couldn't explain. A mix of pride, hope, and something warmer. They folded the quilt and returned to the cabin. That night, neither of them spoke much. Words were not needed. The next day, they worked in the garden. Spring had arrived early, and the ground was ready. Lyra learned how to plant seeds. She hummed while she worked. Later, Aaron returned. He came with supplies, books, and news. He brought seeds from other worlds, safe food, and simple tools made for both human and alien hands. He smiled when he saw Lyra and Ethan planting together. I see you're already building the future, he said. Lyra stood up and wiped her hands. One seed at a time. Aaron shared some news. Other people want to meet you, Lyra. People who want peace. But only if you're ready. Lyra looked at Ethan. He smiled. Your choice. She nodded. Soon. Not yet. I still need to learn. But one day, yes. Aaron respected her answer. He helped them build a new shelter behind the cabin. A place where others could visit, learn, and talk. In the evenings, they sat together near the fire. The quilt stayed in the center of the room, glowing faintly. Visitors who came later would always ask about it. It started with a gift, Ethan would say. A simple act of kindness. And that was the truth. A small thing, a soft thing, had built something strong. Ethan and Lyra kept living, learning from each other. The quilt kept growing too. More patches, more memories, more light. It was no longer just a blanket. It was a bridge between two hearts. And now, maybe between two worlds. The stars above shone the same. But down on Earth, something new had begun. And it all began with warmth, trust, and a quilt that told a story of peace. Many weeks passed. The trees grew tall and green, and flowers opened under the sun. The cabin and garden changed too. A small path led to a new shelter, where guests sometimes came. These were kind people, ones Aaron trusted, who only wanted to learn. Lyra felt more at home now. She no longer looked over her shoulder. She no longer hid the quilt. She smiled more, laughed more, and even helped teach children from nearby towns when they visited. Ethan watched her one morning as she helped the boy learn how to plant a seed. The boy asked if she had a mother. Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Ethan and said, Now I have a family. Ethan looked down, feeling a warmth in his heart. Later that evening, Lyra brought the quilt outside. She laid it out in the grass and added a new crystal. It glowed softly, showing a memory of that day with the boy in the garden. I want to add these new days too, she said, not just the old ones. Ethan nodded. That's good. This is your new life now. Lyra looked at the sky. Do you think others from my world will come? Maybe, Ethan said. And if they do, they will find someone strong and kind waiting. One night, there was a quiet hum outside the cabin. Lyra stood up and went to the door. A small light floated down from the sky. It wasn't a ship. It was a drone from her home world. She stepped outside and touched it. The light changed color, and a soft voice spoke in her own language. Lyra of Yulari, you are not forgotten. We receive your signal. We will come in peace. Tears filled her eyes. She turned to Ethan. They heard me. Ethan stood beside her. Are you happy? Yes, but I am also afraid. Why? Because I have two homes now. Ethan didn't speak for a while. Then he said, no matter what happens, you can always return here. This is your home, too. She placed her hand on his. Thank you. Always. In the following days, they prepared. Not to leave, but to welcome. Lyra wanted her people to see what she had seen. She wanted them to meet Ethan and the others who had helped her. When the day came, a small ship landed in the clearing. It was silent and smooth, like water flowing through air. From its stepped three beings. They looked like Lyra, with glowing eyes and soft voices. She ran to them and spoke in her language. They embraced her. Then she turned and led them to the cabin. Ethan stood by the door, unsure what to say. Lyra took his hand and brought him forward. This is Ethan. He saved me. He gave me this. She held up the quilt. The three visitors looked at it with awe. One touched a crystal and saw a memory. They nodded in respect. Later, they all sat by the fire. Ethan served tea, and Lyra translated when needed. The visitors asked simple questions. They were not here to take her back. They were here to learn. When they left the next day, they promised to return. They said Earth had kind people, people worth knowing. After they were gone, Lyra and Ethan sat outside. The quilt was between them again. You gave me more than safety, Lyra said. You gave me a new story. Ethan smiled. And you made this quiet place full of life. The cabin was quiet now, but not lonely. Visitors came and went. Lyra continued adding patches to the quilt. Each one told a new story. People from nearby towns brought fabric pieces too. They added their own small memories. A first walk, a kind word, a warm meal. The quilt grew and grew. 1 year later, the town built a small hall. In the center was a glass case. Inside it, the quilt was placed, still glowing softly. Above it, a sign read, "The Quilt of Peace." A gift, a bond, a beginning. But Lyra kept one small patch. It was the first one Ethan had wrapped around her that cold night. She kept it close, always. At night, when the stars came out, she would sometimes sit by the fire and hold that patch. I was lost, she would whisper, and someone found me, not with power, not with weapons, but with a quilt. And that simple act changed everything. A blanket, a home, a friend, a forever story. The stars watched over them, but down on Earth, kindness had left its mark. Forever.